Hello, everyone, and welcome to Passion for Truth Ministries' nightly broadcast during the month of Elul. We are going to dive right in tonight and continue where we left off yesterday as we learn more about looking inside of oneself, as we learn more about teshuvah, returning, and as we learn more about being out in the field, like what's right behind me, to meet our King. This is traditionally known as the time where the king is in the field, where the king comes out of the palace, off of the throne of judgment, and meets with his people before he goes back and sits to judge. And so this is such an incredible opportunity, these 29 days of the last month of the Hebrew calendar, on the civil calendar, I should say, before the head of the new civil year, which we call Rosh Hashanah, better known in Bible times as Yom Teruah, the blowing of the trumpets, the Feast of Trumpets. This is when it is prophesied that the Messiah is going to come back, riding on the clouds on his white horse and ready to judge the earth. Before that happens, before every knee will bow and every tongue will confess, I can promise you it is our responsibility to prepare that way for him to return now. And that starts with us stop looking at everybody else around us and all the problems that other people cause and start looking within. And if everybody did that, just imagine for a moment, if everybody looked within and took this month serious and stopped telling everybody else what to do and how to do it and how wrong everybody is, imagine the transformation that would happen within the bride of Messiah. We would actually be ironing out our wrinkles and removing our stains one blotch at a time as we conform to the image of Christ. So yesterday we talked in depth from a quote of Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag from his book Shemati from the late 1940s. And he had an incredible quote and talking about the will to receive and the will to give, and that if we are trying to bestow knowledge upon someone, if we're trying to teach someone something that we've learned that God has shown us, such as that the front of the book has not been done away with, and that the festivals and the feast days are amazing and they're all about Christ, if we try to share those things with the purpose of staying in the superior position, then we have fallen to the lowest form of human reality. Matter of fact, he says, one who bestows knowledge to others in such a way takes on the character of the accuser in all of his form, forcing every last point to his superior position, forcing every last word to point to his superior position. So if our motivation is to persuade people to believe what we believe, then we are no different than the accuser who is trying to do the exact same thing. But if our motivation is to help people understand the truth so that they can be set free, and you ultimately care about them and their well-being, then what happens is you're taking the low position and putting them in the high position. And I can assure you that it's much easier to push people from below, push them up, lift them up, than it is to pull them up when they don't want to be pulled up. God has called us that if you want someone to go higher, you need to go under them. And that's why Yeshua took the position of the servant and the Messiah ben Yosef. He came to be a servant to mankind so that we could be lifted up to what we were originally intended to be. So if we will push ourselves on other people and disrespect other people's belief system by putting ourselves in the superior position, this is actually what happens. If we do not bestow strictly for the other person, keeping them in the respected position that they hold in their own mind, watch this, not only will that person not be moved by 1 inch from their position, but one will have incurred judgment from improper bestowal, actually allowing the flesh to receive gratification of being in the superior position. Did you hear what Rabbi said? This is amazing. That what God is saying is that when we improperly give to someone a truth that God gave to us, when we bestow that in the wrong way, it actually creates judgment on our behalf because we were maintaining the superior position. In other words, we struck the rock twice. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what happened to Moshe, to Moses, is he gave to the people improperly. He represented the Creator in an evil way that the Creator was not meant to be represented. He struck the rock twice when he was supposed to speak to it. In the same way, when we share our beliefs, our thoughts, our motivations, even if it's not about the Bible, if it's not even theology, maybe it's just your opinion on where to go to dinner or what your spouse looks like in that outfit or what your kids should be doing or not be doing, when we give instruction to someone else for any other reason than to grow them in the knowledge of God or to help them in their character, if we do it for any other reason that we can be in the superior position, then we will be the ones that are incurred that judgment. Matter of fact, it reminds me of my own kids. My younger ones, we call the little ones, the littles. They're constantly their best friends and worst enemies all at the same time. Do you have any kids like that where they can't do anything without each other, and because of that, they get on each other's nerves a lot? So we have a rule in our house that if someone does something wrong and they don't bring it to us and let us be the judge, if they judge improperly, then they're the ones that actually take the punishment. In other words, if one of my kids does something wrong and the other one does not handle herself properly, then we're not going to punish the one that actually did something wrong. The one that handled it wrong will actually receive the punishment. And this fixes a lot of problems in our household because the one that does something wrong doesn't want to be punished. The one who was offended wants them to be punished. So it teaches them to handle themselves properly, or they'll actually be the ones to receive the judgment, even though they didn't do anything wrong originally. So that might have been a long tongue twister, but it's all to say this, that if we don't handle ourselves properly in the way that we communicate, either our offenses or even simple instruction to those around us, or trying to share our faith or something that we want them to learn, if we don't do it properly, we will incur the judgment of God. I cannot tell you how many people I have met that have walked away from wanting to follow the front of the book because there was a teacher that taught them that they had a bad taste in their mouth because of some mean spirit that they had or how they were demeaned online. Or it should never be, ladies and gentlemen. God should be able to go through your Facebook feed or your YouTube comments or anything that happens online, which is in print forever, by the way. If he were to just print them all out and at the judgment, just balance it out of the positive versus the negative. Let's just put it on a cosmic scale, right? Where would you lie? Where would some of these, quote, teachers lie? God has not called us to demean someone else's faith or their belief system. Yeshua never did that. Even the woman at the well, he was kind and gentle, and he just shared his thoughts, and it transformed an entire community. So we need to be very careful on how we share these things and how we believe as far as how we look at ourselves. We need to make sure that we put ourselves in the low position. Now watch this. When we're in the low position, do not despise your low position, for it gives us a better view of his throne because he is high and lifted up. Did you hear with that, ladies and gentlemen? My friends, brethren, when we are in a low position, don't feel like that you are in an inferior position. There's a difference between inferior and low. You can both be human beings, and one can bow before the Creator and be in the low position, and one can stick his chest out, and be in the high position. One is not inferior, one is simply lower. And so when we choose to put ourselves in the lower position, what happens is it just simply creates a greater vantage point to see him high and lifted up. If you don't see God in the right perspective of being high and lifted up, then you're not low enough. If you don't see the glory of God all over your life, then you're not low enough. If you don't see the power of the living God working in your life, you're not low enough. God calls us to be low so that we can actually grow in his glory. He wants us to be in the train that fills his temple. He wants us to be under the shadow of his wings. But you know what? In order to be under the shadow of his wings, you got to be okay with the dark. You got to be okay with feathers ruffling you, your feathers being ruffled. You have to be okay with the uncomfortable, because to be low is to be high. To be high is to be low. Everything that is logical in this realm is illogical in his realm. Everything that's logical in his realm is illogical in our realm. I'll give you an example. Do you think that angels have faith or even need faith? Brethren, I'm going to tell you right now, they don't. They don't need it at all. You know why? Because faith doesn't mean anything to them. They live in that realm already. For them, it's not called faith. It's called reality. They live in the reality of the truth. They live in the reality of God's promises. There is no doubt because they're already surrounded by the light. In our realm, living in the dark, we do not have a clue what reality is all about. When we walk in faith, we're actually walking above logic, above reason. And when we do that, we're walking in God's reality. And that's when we are absorbing his glory. That's when we become high and lifted up. When we become under the shadow of his wing, when we're willing to get off this earth and Nasa, be lifted up under the shadow of his wings. It says this, to know one's lowliness is to know one is not more privileged than one's contemporaries, for not everyone is given the same gifts to accomplish the same work. Did you hear that? When we really truly know our lowliness, one of the gauges for knowing that you're in the right place is knowing that not everyone is given the same gifts to accomplish the same work. So the hand can't look at the mouth and say, boy, I really wish I was a mouth. The one who is the foot cannot say to the head, boy, I really wish I was the head and could be that smart. What good is the head if it doesn't have a mouth, a hand, or a foot? They all are working together. Unfortunately, you have so much jealousy, so much envy that happens in the body of Messiah, that full destruction of ministries and lives can be of a result. Does anybody remember the story of Korah in the Bible? Remember when the children of Israel came out of Egypt and Korah got jealous of Moses, because who is Moses? The guy can't even hardly talk. He stutters right all the way through every sentence, so much so they had to get Aaron to be his mouthpiece. So Korah says, man, who put you in charge, right? Like, I would pretty much think that's one of the dumbest things I've heard since the fact that God called him up to the top of the mountain. Probably not a good idea to question the anointed of God, but he did, and it started out of envy and jealousy. He wanted to be lifted up like Moses, and you know what that ended in? 250 ministries destroyed. You say, Jim, what are you talking about? Yeah, 250 of the top leaders of Israel. Each one of those individuals were ministers. They were leaders. They had their own ministries over their own tribes. And you know what happened? Korah led them in a rebellion of witchcraft against Moses, and they probably thought they were right. But you know what ended up happening? God swallowed them up, and they became crispy critters before the Creator. And at the end of the day, jealousy and envy destroys the kingdom of God, because only Yahweh knows how many, literally millions or billions of people were affected because those leaders were no longer there to lead their people. They were the top. They were gifted. They were talented. They were anointed. And Korah deceived them through his jealousy and his envy. And entire ministries were destroyed, and Israel was split. The doubt began to give into God's people. It began to be planted as a seed in the heart, and it resulted in millions of people missing out on their inheritance, as only Joshua and Caleb generation were allowed to cross the river Jordan. So when we take the position of recognizing that we're all in this together, that we're unified under Christ, and we actually get to that place in our heart and mind where we're okay with not being the best, we're okay with being a servant, we're okay with being low, then guess what? You're already in the higher position in his realm. You're already walking in heaven reality. Lowness is when one is despised before men. When one is low, one can see him high and lifted up. When one understands, when one looks at oneself in a situation and realizes that he's deceived himself, he maintains a position of self-reflection and that he is the one deceived. He gives the Creator, listen to this, my friend, he gives the Creator the authority to be the judge and reveal the truth in due time. Did you hear that? What God is saying is this, is that when you come to a place where you're okay with being wrong, that you're okay with being the one, the odd man out, not having to be the top dog or not having to be right all the time, when you choose to put your other friend first, you're not your wife, your kids, your employer, your friend, when you choose to put other first and love them and stay in the low position, like we said in yesterday's broadcast, not only are you derobing yourself from the pride, which puts you in the feminine position, which automatically initiates the husbandry inside of Yahweh to come and clothe you with his glory and honor you, what you're doing is you're giving him the authority to reveal the truth in the right time. Have you ever thought, my friend, that in whatever situation that you're in, let's just say you're trying to share your faith, since we're talking a lot about that today, and you're trying to share your faith and your mom doesn't get it, or your dad doesn't get it, or your kids don't get it, your spouse doesn't get what you're trying to share. There's one of two things, I believe, my friend, that's happening. One, either you're sharing it and bestowing it in the wrong way and creating a deficit in your own spirit life, and you're creating a deficit in them or a stumbling block in them to receive it or hear it because you're not living out the law of love, which is all of the law and the prophets right there. Or number two, it's simply not God's timing. Is it possible that we could actually put people back in the hands of the Creator and say, you know what, here's what God's doing in my life, and never tell them that God needs to do that in their life, but say, this is what the Father's showing me. And if they don't get excited about it, then the Spirit of God has not illuminated it inside of their heart, because the Bible says that only the Holy Spirit can draw a man unto himself. It does not happen through intellect. Paul says, I did not come with persuasive words and all this intellect. I came with the power of the living God. I want to see the power come into this movement as God's people begin to see the roots of their Christian faith, and they see the Spirit infused into the truth. The power is inevitable to come, my friends. So I encourage you this night, as we come to a close, to make sure that you check your heart at the door and check in somebody else's when you walk through. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about the Creator doing great things in their life. Pray for them. Give God the opportunity to show a miracle when you love first. Learn to listen, learn to love, and you'll fulfill all the law and the prophets. I'm Jim Staley, and I pray that God blesses you and keeps you this evening. We'll see you tomorrow night. Shalom.